Welcome, everyone. Ready for another deep dive. This one, this was all about Al-Abbas ibn Abd al-Muttalib.
Oh, this is gonna be good.
Yeah, yeah, most people, they hear that name and they think Prophet Muhammad's uncle.
Right.
But there's so much more to his story.
Way more than just that family connection, yeah.
We're talking influence. We're talking about him navigating like the whole rise of Islam.
Oh, absolutely. And think about it. Even before Islam, Al-Abbas was already a major figure in Mecca. Like, you couldn't ignore this guy.
He had it all wealth. He was influential, and the sources even talk about him like he had this presence,
Ah.
striking.
Oh, yeah. Described as tall, fair-skinned, had these flowing braids, and get this, a voice that could carry for miles.
Whoa, really? Like a booming voice.
Apparently, can you imagine that? I mean, especially compared to the prophet who, was known for being more soft-spoken.
I know. It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
right? Like did that booming voice ever come in handy during those family disagreements?
Oh, I bet it did. And you can't forget, he was also the one in charge of taking care of all the pilgrims who came to Mecca.
That's a pretty big deal.
Huge deal. Mecca was all about trade and pilgrimage, so that position gave him serious social clout and of course, economic power too. Al-Abbas was the guy to know.
So, okay, we have this influential guy, and he's what, just 3 years older than the prophet? Grew up alongside him practically.
Yeah, they were close.
But then comes Islam.
Yeah.
And it gets complicated. Like his wife, Al-Fadl,
Right?
she's one of the very first Muslims.
Some even say the first woman after Khadijah.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's debated.
But then on the other hand, you've got his brother, Abu Lahab, and he's like one of the prophet's biggest opponents.
Yeah, that's got to be some serious family drama right there.
And you imagine those family gatherings?
Yeah,
Yikes.
definitely tense. But even though Al-Abbas resisted Islam at first, he always seemed to have this protective instinct towards his nephew.
Yeah, that comes through in a lot of the stories.
Like when the prophet migrated to Medina, Al-Abbas was a key part of making that happen, even though he stayed back in Mecca himself.
He even grilled the Ansar, the
Yeah.
people who welcomed the prophet in Medina, like demanding they prove they were strong enough to protect him.
Yeah, protective, but also maybe a little skeptical still,
It's interesting. There's this mix of skepticism and genuine concern.
Exactly. And here's where it gets even more interesting, because some accounts say that Al-Abbas, he might have already been a Muslim by then.
Really?
Yeah, just keeping it hidden.
Wow. So he's helping the prophet escape, but not openly Muslim himself.
That changes how you see things.
For sure. And then you've got the Battle of Bad,
Yeah.
and suddenly Al-Abbas is captured, forced to fight against the Muslims.
Whoa.
I know, right? Can you
Yeah.
imagine that? Having to go up against your own nephew?
It must have been just heartbreaking for both of them, especially given how close they were. Oh, absolutely. And there are these really powerful descriptions of Al-Abbas on the battlefield. Usually he's this imposing figure, right? But there he was, just standing, immobile, tears streaming down his face.
Wow.
It's said that it literally took a miracle for him to be captured.
A
right?
miracle.
Yeah, like an angel had to intervene for one of the companions to overpower him. That's how strong he was.
Temps.
Even as a captive, the prophet, he was so worried about his uncle, he kept asking about him. It shows you, just how deep their bond was.
Yeah, that comes through.
And this whole event, it becomes this big turning point, because when they're figuring out his ransom, Al-Abbas, he offers the largest amount out of anyone.
He did.
And then he reveals something incredible.
What's that?
He tells the prophet that he was a Muslim all along.
Wait, hold on. I thought I'd read somewhere that the prophet already knew Al-Abbas had hidden some money.
Yeah. It said that the prophet, he knew not just that Al-Abbas had hidden this money, but he knew where it was and even who it was for.
That's wild.
I know. And there's even a verse in the Quran that some scholars connect to this whole event. It's about Allah, rewarding those who have goodness in their hearts, even if their outward actions, they seem different.
Yeah, so there's layers to this story.
Like an onion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, okay, so after all that,
Yeah.
Al-Abbas finally joins the Muslim community in Medina. But he's not just another convert.
Oh, no, not at all. Prophet Muhammad, he keeps showing him this incredible amount of respect.
He does.
Like there's even a saying from the prophet where he tells the Ansar, "He who hurts Abbas hurts me." That's powerful.
Powerful is right. So Al-Abbas, he goes from this powerhouse in Mecca to being like incredibly respected in Medina. And it's not just because of family ties, it's something deeper. But, we just scratched the surface here. His story, it just gets more and more fascinating. Ready to dive deeper.
It's really interesting when you think about it. Al-Abbas's story, it kind of flips the script on that typical conversion narrative.
Yeah, like he doesn't just have this before and after moment.
Right. It's more like things are unfolding gradually for him.
He's wrestling with his beliefs, with his loyalties. It makes him a lot more relatable, I think. Because who hasn't had to make tough choices or felt pulled in different directions?
Exactly. And here's Al-Abbas doing all this while the world around him is completely changing.
Yeah, like trying to find his place in all this upheaval. And let's not forget, he was already a major player before he formally became a Muslim.
Oh, for sure. He was like this hub of information in Mecca.
If you wanted to know what was going on, you went to Al-Abbas.
Seriously, like there's this story about Abdullah ibn Jafar. He comes to Mecca, wants to learn about this new faith, and guess who he goes to?
Al-Abbas.
Al-Abbas. Who else?
Of course.
And the way Al-Abbas talks about Islam to him, it's really interesting. He doesn't sugarcoat anything.
He's straight up.
Yeah, like he's upfront about the persecution, the challenges Muslims were facing, but he also highlights the core message, God's oneness, the importance of prayer, that kind of thing.
He even tells him that at that point, it was really just the Prophet, Ali, and Khadijah practicing this religion.
Yeah, a tiny group, but determined, right? And I think it shows that Al-Abbas, he got it. He understood what was happening.
He saw the potential impact.
Yeah. He might not have been a public Muslim then, but he recognized the power of what was going on. And that awareness, combined with his influence, it made him a crucial part of everything that happened next. We've talked about the Hijra, his capture of Bad, and then him finally saying, okay, I am a Muslim. But his story, it takes on a whole other dimension once he's in Medina with the Muslim community.
It does.
Yeah.
Like he goes from being this powerful figure in Mecca to being incredibly respected in Medina. And the Prophet, he constantly honors Al-Abbas, like really emphasizing their bond.
Their connection was special.
There's even that story where the Prophet says the only people who could inherit from him, besides his wives and daughter, would be Al-Abbas.
Wow, that's huge. And that respect, it wasn't just from the Prophet. The whole community, they held Al-Abbas in high regard.
Oh, yeah. Like, remember that story about the broken pipe at his house?
Oh, yeah.
Omar, the one known for being super strict, he literally lets Al-Abbas stand on his back to fix it.
I know. It's almost reverence,
Definitely goes beyond just respect.
It shows you Al-Abbas's unique position. He's this link to the Prophet's past, a reminder of where Islam came from, and a symbol of the strength of family, even when things get complicated.
Absolutely. And speaking of strength, did you know he was also involved in the Battle of Hunain?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was right there with the Prophet.
Holding the reins of the Prophet's animal during the fight, right?
Yep. And when some of the Muslim soldiers, they started to panic and run, it was Al-Abbas who used that booming voice of his to rally them back to the battle.
Wait, he did?
He did.
I mean, think about it. He was, what, in his 60s? Maybe even 70s at that point?
It's amazing to imagine him out there in the heat of battle, using his voice to inspire the troops.
I know. It really shows his courage, his leadership.
And the respect he commanded. He wasn't just some figurehead. He was out there in the thick of things during these crucial moments in early Islamic history. And even after the Prophet's death, his influence continued, especially with Caliph Umar.
You're thinking of that year of the drought in Medina, right?
Yeah. When everyone was desperate for rain, and Umar, he leads this prayer, and he specifically invokes Al-Abbas's connection to the Prophet.
Like he's saying, hey, look at who's with me, Allah. We need your help.
Exactly. It was a strategic move. By highlighting Al-Abbas's link to the Prophet, Umar added this spiritual weight to their plea. And guess what?
It worked.
It worked. The rains came, the drought ended, and countless lives were saved.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. But it wasn't always about practical matters, right? There's also that story about Omar conquering Jerusalem.
Oh, yeah. The one where they mistake Al-Abbas for the Caliph.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Omar, he conquers Jerusalem, enters the city, but all eyes are on Al-Abbas.
It's amazing, right? It perfectly captures the level of respect he had. He was this towering figure, literally and figuratively. His presence it commanded attention. But it wasn't just his stature or his connection to the Prophet. There was something else that drew people to him.
It's a generosity.
You got it. Al-Abbas was known for for constantly giving away his wealth, helping those in need, supporting good causes. There's even a story where the prophet, he prays for Abbas, asking Allah to forgive all his sins, big or small, hidden or public, and to bless him and his children.
That's a powerful prayer.
It really is. It shows the deep affection the prophet had for him, not just as his uncle, but as a genuinely good person. And remember, Al Abbas had a big family.
It's 15 children.
15 children, and many of them became notable figures themselves.
Oh yeah, like his son Abdullah ibn Abbas.
Right, the famous scholar, expert in Islamic law and Quranic interpretation.
Yeah, and it doesn't stop there. His descendants, they go on to establish the Abbasid dynasty.
One of the most powerful and influential dynasties in Islamic history.
It's incredible. You think about this one man. He starts as a powerful figure in pre-Islamic Mecca, and then his influence, it ripples through history.
Yeah, it's remarkable. But as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I wanted to leave you with a question. We've talked about Al Abbas's public life, his
Right.
role in all these big events, his bond with the prophet, the respect he earned. But what about his inner life?
That's interesting. Like what were his private thoughts?
Mm.
His doubts, his fears? How did he go from resisting Islam to fully embracing it?
Yeah, the sources, they don't really tell us that part of the story.
Makes you wonder.
It does. And maybe by thinking about these gaps, by trying to understand the unspoken parts of his story, we can get even closer to who Al Abbas really was. Not just as a historical figure, but as a human being.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About what must have been going on inside Al Abbas's head.
Oh, yeah.
Here he is, this important figure in Mecca. He's part of the system.
Yeah.
And then his nephew shows up with this message that basically challenges everything.
Right. It's not just about changing your beliefs.
It's about changing society, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And to make things even more complicated, his own family is split right down the middle.
I know, right? His wife, one of the first Muslims, and his brother, one of the prophet's fiercest opponents.
Exactly. And Al Abbas, it seems like he's wrestling with it all,
Yeah.
supporting the prophet, but not openly embracing Islam.
Yeah. It really shows you how tough it must have been for people during those times, like trying to figure out where you stand when everything's changing around you.
Oh, absolutely. It's this huge internal conflict.
But even with all that, his loyalty to the prophet never wavered.
Never.
Even back in Mecca, before he publicly becomes a Muslim, he's protecting the prophet,
Yeah.
negotiating for him, making sure he's safe.
It's like he understood how important the prophet's message was, even if he hadn't fully accepted it for himself yet.
Yeah, like he sensed the magnitude of what was happening.
And then you have the Battle of Bad.
Oh, man.
What a turning point. Imagine being captured, being forced to fight against your own family, knowing that what you do could change everything.
It's hard to even wrap your head around that. The emotional toll it must have taken on him.
Oh, yeah. But it's in those moments, the tough ones, that you really see someone's true character. And the sources, they describe Al Abbas on that battlefield, frozen, tears streaming down his face.
Wow.
This imposing figure, totally overwhelmed by it all.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even the most powerful people are still human.
Exactly.
Capable of feeling those deep emotions, struggling with those difficult choices.
And it's during that battle that Al Abbas finally reveals his faith to the prophet.
Says he's been a Muslim all along.
Yeah, and it's like a weight lifted off his shoulders,
Yeah.
and it confirms what the prophet, it seems, already knew.
Right, like the prophet had this sense about it all along.
It makes you wonder, did the Battle of Bad, in a way, force Al Abbas's hand? Like he had to make a choice, and that's when it all came out.
It's definitely possible.
Yeah.
But from that moment on, there's no turning back.
Nope.
He joins the Muslim community in Medina, but he's not just any convert, right?
Oh, no, not at all. He's this respected elder, someone the prophet
A
trusts.
symbol of the link between Mecca and Medina.
Exactly. And it's not just about his status, it's about how he lives his life.
His generosity.
His willingness to help people, his loyalty to his family, his commitment to Islam.
Like it all finally clicked for him. His inner beliefs matched his actions.
And the Muslim community, they welcomed him with open arms. They saw his sincerity, his wisdom.
And the impact he had, it didn't stop there, right? I mean, his son, Abdul ibn Abbas, became a leading scholar.
One of the greatest. And his descendants, they went on to found the Abbasid dynasty.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. This one man who starts as a powerful figure in pre-Islamic Mecca ends up influencing Islamic civilization for centuries.
His story shows you the power of faith, how strong family bonds can be, and how one person's choices can really make a difference in the world.
So we've explored the life of Abbas ibn Muttalib, his influence, his struggles, the impact he had. He was more than just the Prophet's uncle. He was a man of deep conviction, incredibly generous, and a symbol of loyalty during a time of massive change.
His story is just one of many, many amazing stories from Islamic history.
And there are so many more waiting to be discovered.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep diving deep.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.